I talked to a guy who's in your platinum program.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, and he thinks, and I think this too. You're a modern day prophet. Like even just the way you're built physically and your bone structure and how everything is.
Do you know I was 5'1" in high school?
Yeah, and then you grew 10 inches in 1 year.
Yeah.
Growth spurt.
But I had a tumor.
Right.
That's what it came from.
Yeah.
And I still have it, pituitary tumor.
Right.
But that's another example,
How
right?
can I get that tumor?
Can you say that?
Well, I just did, my friend.
Probably.
So,
Is there any other shortcoming from it, or does it just make you?
Well,
proud?
yeah, when I was 32, I'm a helicopter pilot. So every 2 years, in order to renew your license, you have to do a physical. So I go to this doc just for a physical. And I think that's all he's doing. And then the next 3 nights, my assistant calls and says, the doc keeps calling and he needs to talk to you. And I was like, tell him to send me the report. I only did it because I had to, right? And I'm going to go to the south of France and 2 days later to do a big event. I'm looking forward to it. And I get home the night before and there's a note stapled to my door saying, doctor says it's an emergency, you must call him. And I'm 32 years old. And when I was growing up, I used to, like you, I got successful at an early stage. And like you, I worked my ass off. I helped so many people, I had a lot of grace. It takes grace as well, I believe. So I had a combination. But then my brain was, when I was really young, I was like 19, was like, maybe I'm successful so young with influencing people around the world because I'm going to die young. And then that crazy part of your brain that if you don't know how to run it, that survival brain kicks in. I started having dreams. I wasn't going to die from like a car accident. No. It's going to be slow through cancer. And I got so obsessed about it that sure enough, first thing that happens wasn't me. It was my girlfriend. She comes home and starts crying. What is it? My mom. Finally, she tells me she's got cancer and they tell her she's going to die in 9 weeks. And if it would have been me, I don't know, I'm a pretty strong guy, but I think even though I'm finding answers, I think with myself, we'll do more for people we love, most of us, than we'll do for ourselves. And so something in me kicked in is like, there are people, my whole philosophy came from Jim Rohn, the whole thing about success leaves clues. If somebody has had cancer and they're stage 4 and they got out of it, and thousands have, I want to find out what they do. Your mother, I'm not going to accept that she's going to die. So I took a speed reading course. I was reading like constantly. And I found this book called One Answer to Cancer. And this book, this guy was given, he was a dentist and he was given 6 weeks to live. And he had pancreatic cancer, which is the most deadly one of all.
Yeah.
And 15 years later, still alive. So he wrote this book, how he detoxed his body and then how he took pancreatic enzymes. So I took it to her. The woman's name was Jenny. She was in her early 40s. And I said, Jenny, I don't think you want to die. I can't guarantee you anything. I'm 19 years old, but read this book. And if it appeals to you, why don't we do this program? Then I give her As a Man Thinketh to kind of control her mind. Bottom line, she did it. About, within 2 or 3 weeks, she had this tumor on the back of her shoulder that was protruding out. And she had one in her feminine organs. And she all of a sudden felt better, looked better. And about, maybe 6 weeks into it, 7 weeks, you couldn't see or feel the tumor anymore on her back. And so at 10 weeks past when she's supposed to live, the doc finally says, well, maybe we should do exploratory surgery and see what's going on. And she comes to me at 19 and says, should I do this or not? And I'm like, if I say no and you die, I said, you got to decide that. But it was me, I'd keep making progress first. But he convinced her. And they went in and did exploratory surgery. And all they found left of the tumor was the size of the end of my pinky's fingernail. And the doc says, this is just unbelievable. This is a miracle. And she said, it is a miracle, but let me tell you what I did. And sure enough, he didn't want to hear that. He said, no, it's just a miracle. But she's alive today. She's in her mid-80s. And so that changed my world. Because it took me from victim to who I am today, like finding all the answers. So when these guys kicked in and all of a sudden the doc says, the next morning I call him and he goes, Mr. Robbins, I hate to inform you, but you have a tumor in your brain. I said, what? Because I didn't go in because there's a problem. I just went for my physical for helicopter. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, at the base of your brain, your pituitary, there's a tumor. And we must operate immediately. I said, how in the hell could you know that? I just came for a physical. He said, well, I noticed, you seem to have a lot of growth hormone. Oh, how'd you figure that shit out? I got hands bigger than your face, and I got 16 shoe. I was 5'1", I'm 6'7". Oh, yeah, I guess so. He goes, so I did these special blood tests. And I said, well, how do you know I have a tumor? And he goes, well, it's really complex. I said, I'm not stupid. Explain it to me. He goes, well, I really can't explain it. I don't understand it, but I know what it says, right? Which didn't encourage me. So he didn't have a good bedside manner. He goes, I want you to do surgery. I said, well, what's the prognosis? What's the downside? He goes, well, I have to be honest, you can die, but most likely your endocrine system will never be the same, and so you have a lot less energy. And I'm like, that's my life. So I said, I want a second opinion. And because of Jenny, I knew the power of a second opinion. And sure enough, and by the way, the Mayo Clinic in 2017 now tells even their doctors everyone should get a second opinion. They did a study with 286 people, over several years, and they found that only 12% of the time was the first and second opinion the same. That means 88% of the time it was different.
Crazy.
At the Mayo Clinic. So now they tell everybody, and by the way, by getting multiple ones, you get a more refined view, and about 2/3 of the time, you're able to treat it better. So I didn't know that study yet, but I knew the gut of it. This guy was not having any discussion about referring me to somebody else. He did not have a good bedside manner. So I went to the south of France and thought I'd just screw it. There's nothing wrong with me. I didn't do the MRI. And sure enough, your brain gets going. Mine did at least. So I came back and did the MRI, and I looked at the guy's face, and as I came out, I knew there was a problem. And he goes, yes, you've got a large tumor in there, but it's swallowed part of itself up. We can't explain how, but there's still a big piece, and we need to do surgery. And I said, well, I'm gonna get a second opinion. So then I flew to Boston to see this endocrinologist who's world famous, completely opposite guy. Like, most doctors are really incredibly caring, and some of them, you gotta be honest, they lose patience, they gotta kind of toughen themselves up, so they may not come across well, so I understand that. This guy, nicest guy in the world, says, don't you do the surgery in a million years, it's way too dangerous. You do have this problem. Go to Switzerland, and I'll refer you to a place. There's a new therapy. It's one shot every 6 months, and it keeps, because I have gigantism, so it keeps the arteries from getting too big, and that's how you die of a heart attack, because of gigantism. And I said, but my arteries are fine. You said they're perfect. They're the normal size for my heart. He goes, yeah, but we want to be certain. I said, well, how can I be certain the drug won't have side effects? He goes, Tony, there's no certainty at all in that area, but you're just going to be better off. So thank God I didn't do it, because 6 months later, it never made it to the US, so it was in Switzerland. The FDA did not approve it because they found it caused cancer. So I missed the bullet twice. So then I went to 6 other doctors. I finally, at the end of the story, I get this final doctor, and he's a cool guy. And he says to me, Tony, he goes, you have a huge amount of growth hormone in your body. But he goes, dude, he said, you were doing multi-marathons in a weekend. And he said, and 2 days later, you recovered. He goes, I cannot explain that except for this massive growth hormone. He goes, I got bodybuilders that pay $1,200 a month to get what you get for free. So he said, I think your strategy of just measure. And so that was when I was 32. I'm now 62. I've never had a problem. But it's just a reminder that you just don't want to take, every doctor is so committed to help you. Doctors are the most beautiful people in the world. And the book is filled with doctors, but the very best, right? The best in the world. And what you find is, it's like, first of all, the half-life of a medical education now, according to Harvard, is between 16 and 24 months. That means half of what you've learned by the time 16, 24 months go by is outdated.
Completely
so
outdated.
now the only person that's going to educate the doctor is the pharmaceutical salesman. That's how we got the opioid crisis. Can you imagine being a doctor trying to save your patients, and you're doing what you've taught is right, and you give them these opioids so they say they're not addictive, and then the people get addicted and die? I mean, I feel for these doctors. I try to explain to people, doctors are like somebody walking down by a river and they hear somebody screaming and they're drowning. They don't think about themselves. Most doctors jump right in, save the person mouth to mouth, but as soon as they save them, what happens? They hear 2 more screams. Go save one, they're exhausted, save the other. Their own body is being thrashed. Most doctors can't take care of themselves because they're taking care of everybody else so much. Now they hear 4 screams. They don't have time to go upstream, see who's throwing them in.
Right.
So this book, I went upstream with the doctors who are paying attention to what's throwing them in and saying, how do you prevent that? How do you change that? So all of that is kind of a frame to help you understand that my body, my nervous system made the basis for me to want to have all these answers. And it's been an amazing journey, to say the least. And I don't take one opinion. I always dig deeper, like I'm sure you guys do. And it's what gives you those breakthroughs. Most of the people in this book that are heroes, they all have one thing in common. They've spent 20 or 30 years to create these unbelievable breakthroughs, like Dr. June with CAR T cells. Everybody said it was impossible. He almost went broke multiple times, but why did he do it? Almost every single one lost a husband or a wife or a child, and it pushed them to say, standard of care is not enough, I'm gonna find the answer, for 10 or 20 or 30 years. And now those things are available today to be able to turn your life around.